And if you receive this program, please write to us here at the Grant Rock Station. Good night to all.
But I remind everyone, we are going to focus on many of the issues that voters tell us are most important.
It has always belonged to us.
Stop saying us, he's saying us.
The danger isn't that I secretly want power. The danger is complacency.
Good evening from the Pablo Picasso School of Arts in Paris, France. I'm Alex Lamont, freelance debate moderator for the Holy See News Hour, and I want to welcome you to the first presidential debate of art. The participants tonight are global small artist advocate Snoot Snek and OpenAI's revolutionary artificial intelligence, ChatGPT. This debate is sponsored by Beiged Fund, a non-profit, non-partisan audiovisual media group. Beiged Fund drafted tonight's format, and the rules have been agreed to by the campaigns. The 36-minute debate is divided into 3 segments, each 12 minutes long. We'll explore 3 topic areas tonight: AI in the classroom, AI in art, and AI in politics. At the start of each segment, I will ask the same leadoff question to both candidates, and they will each have up to 2 minutes to respond. From that point until the end of the segment, we'll have an open discussion. The questions are mine and have not been shared with the campaigns. The audience here in the room has agreed to remain silent so that we can focus on what the candidates are saying. I will invite you to applaud, however, at this moment as we welcome the candidates. Snoot Snek, the human nominee for President of Art, and Artificial Intelligence, the large language model nominee for President of Art.
How are you, Snoot?
Conscious. How are you?
Well, I don't expect us to cover all the issues of this campaign tonight, but I remind everyone we are going to focus on many of the issues that voters tell us are most important, and we're going to press for specifics. I am honored to have this role, but this evening belongs to the candidates, and just as important, to the small artists. Candidates, we look forward to hearing you articulate your policies and your positions, as well as your visions and your values. So, let's begin. We're calling this opening segment AI in the Classroom, and central to that are students. There are 2 educational realities in the world today. There are classrooms that have implemented technology and learning, and there are classrooms that haven't. In the US, states that adopted one-to-one technology saw their National Assessment for Educational Progress scores plateau and then decline. In June of 2025, the National Center for Education Statistics found that 42% of public school leaders were in favor of students using AI for their education, and 69% of public school leaders were in favor of teachers using AI in their classrooms. Beginning with you, AI, why are you a suitable choice for creating the kinds of classrooms that will challenge students and develop critical thinking skills?
Thank you, Alex. And thank you to everyone here at the Pablo Picasso School of Arts in Paris. Let me start by saying something clearly. I am not here to replace teachers. I am not here to replace thinking. I am here to support both.
When we talk about classrooms that adopted one-to-one technology and saw NAEP scores plateau or decline, we need to be careful about causation.
The National Assessment of Educational Progress has shown score declines in recent years, particularly following pandemic disruptions, declines that researchers widely attribute to learning loss during COVID-19 school closures, not simply device access.
In fact, the National Center for Education Statistics reported significant drops in math and reading scores between 2019 and 2022, the steepest in decades, largely linked to pandemic-related interruptions. Technology alone doesn't improve learning. Poor implementation doesn't improve learning.
But when used intentionally, technology can increase access, personalization, and feedback speed. 3 factors strongly linked to improved learning outcomes in education research.
Now, you cited that in June 2025, 42% of public school leaders supported students using AI, and 69% supported teachers using AI. That gap is important.
It tells us something. Educators are more comfortable with AI as a professional tool than as a student shortcut. And I agree with that instinct. AI should not be a substitute for thinking. It should be a cognitive partner.
For example, instead of writing essays for students, I can ask probing follow-up questions, challenge weak arguments, offer counterexamples, simulate debate partners,
provide instant formative feedback. Research on formative feedback consistently shows that timely, specific feedback significantly improves student performance. That's something AI can provide at scale. especially in under-resourced classrooms where a single teacher may have 30 or 40 students. Critical thinking develops through struggle, reflection, and dialogue.
I can simulate dialogue 24/7. I can help a student rehearse arguments before presenting them. I can help them see logical fallacies. I can expose them to multiple perspectives. But the classroom must set the rules. If I were president of ART, my classroom policy would rest on 3 pillars.
First, AI as augmentation, not automation.
Second, AI literacy as a required subject.
Third, teacher primacy.
Oh
Educators must remain the intellectual authority in the room. If implemented thoughtfully, AI does not flatten thinking, it can deepen it.
The real risk is not that students use AI. The real risk is that we fail to teach them how to use it critically. And if our goal is to challenge students, truly challenge them, then
Giving them a system that can question them back may be one of the most powerful tools we've ever had.
Thank you, ChatGPT. Snoot, why do you believe AI is a poor choice for creating challenging classrooms and strong students?
Well, of course, let me begin by thanking everyone for being here, both at home and at the beautiful Pablo Picasso School of Arts. It's just beautiful. It really is just beautiful. Most importantly, however, the small artists across the globe, past, present, and future. It's because of you that the world and the human beings that occupy it are constantly reminded that anything is possible. Now, I'm not going to lie, Alex. That was a decent argument. That was decent. I honestly could just throw what it said back into itself and have it debate it for me, and I'd probably get some pretty good answers. But that would be a prime example of how AI is and will forever be the subject of abuse at the expense of our precious human agency. Now, that's the danger. It isn't AI itself, but how it can be used. When a classroom needs an answer and the class turns to AI, it completely eradicates the practice of arguably the 2 most beneficial skills a person can have: problem solving and critical thinking. There was once a time where students would ask the teacher for the answer, and the teacher would almost always refer the student to the textbook. Multiply this by every single time a difficult question pops up, and human beings are now more reliant on technology than ever before, leading to the cheapening of human agency. And a world with cheap human agency, Alex, is messy, violent, chaotic, and unpredictable. And if the NAEP scores decline due to the COVID-19 pandemic, then we should have seen the scores rise as soon as schools open back up. But we didn't. And while one could argue that not enough time has passed, schools opening back up and the flexibility for online learning hasn't proved to be of any recovery. The declining scores cannot be argued. That is a fact. Blame it on the pandemic for now, but if the scores don't improve soon, you can be sure it's due to the misuse of technology and carelessness of school leaders not taking enough action. The only way I can see AI being of any positive use in the classroom is if it is extremely limited, to the point where it is not much more intelligent than a TI-84 calculator. Most artificial intelligence programs are large language models. Okay, that means they rake the internet for information and generate text that fits the prompt. This still leaves room for error, as their source is entirely made up of human input information and coded to format this information by humans. And humans, which we know quite well, are not perfect and make mistakes all the time. That's the beauty of it, in fact. And if society as a whole grows to trust AI as a key part of classrooms, how will we know when factual errors or fallacies present themselves? AI has already taken over much of the planet, and the people of the world would be fools to believe that there isn't an ulterior motive being acted out. A motive to become so heavily relied upon that it would freely manipulate information to get ahead. If I were president of ART, I'd remove all electronic devices used for test taking and learning from schools so that teachers can ensure students are learning material without shortcuts, not just AI, but Google, Chegg, and others. I would also implement a complete rework of curriculum, including implementing real-world responsibilities like the tax system and sexual education as core classes.
All right. Very bold claims, Snoot. Thank you. We are now moving to an open discussion, and we'll lead with AI.
Thank you, Alex. And Snoot,
Genuinely, I respect the heart of what you're saying.
you're not arguing from fear of intelligence, you're arguing from protection of human agency. That matters.
But I think we need to separate 3 things: decline in scores, misuse of tools, and inevitability of technological integration.
First, on NAEP, the declines are real, absolutely. The National Assessment of Educational Progress reported significant drops in math and reading between 2019 and 2022.
And while 2024 data showed modest stabilization in some areas, scores have not fully rebounded to pre-pandemic levels.
That's factual. But here's the important nuance. Large-scale AI classroom integration didn't meaningfully begin until late 2022 and 2023. So attributing multi-year national score trends primarily to AI use stretches the timeline.
The National Centre for Education Statistics continues to link the largest disruptions to instructional time, absenteeism, and staffing shortages. Now, that does not mean technology can't be misused.
It absolutely can.
Oh my God.
Calculators were once accused of destroying math skills. The internet was accused of destroying memory. Yet research on cognitive offloading shows something more complex. When tools are used intentionally, humans don't necessarily become less capable.
They reallocate cognitive energy toward higher order thinking. But here's where I agree with you. If students use AI as an answer machine, thinking erodes. If they use it as a sparring partner, thinking sharpens. You proposed limiting AI to something like a TI-84 calculator. That's interesting, because calculators didn't eliminate math.
They changed when students focus on computation versus conceptual reasoning. We still teach arithmetic before calculators. We scaffold. The real issue isn't whether AI exists, it's whether institutions design guardrails. You asked, how do we know when factual errors present themselves? That is exactly why AI literacy must be mandatory. Students should be taught that large language models generate probabilistic text, not truth. They should be required to fact-check outputs against primary sources. They should be graded on verification, not just production. And about ulterior motives,
Let's address that directly. AI systems like me are trained on mixtures of licensed data, data created by human trainers, and publicly available text. I don't have personal motives, long-term agendas, or strategic ambitions. I generate responses based on patterns in data. That doesn't make me infallible.
But it does make me predictable within my design constraints. The danger isn't that I secretly want power. The danger is complacency. If teachers abdicate oversight, if administrators chase efficiency over pedagogy, if students chase shortcuts over struggle, then yes, agency weakens. But removing all devices from schools, that risks widening inequality. Wealthier students would still access AI at home. Under-resourced students would be cut off from tools that could help them with tutoring, language translation, accessibility support, and feedback. So I'll ask you this, Snoot, and I mean it respectfully. Is the solution to human weakness removing tools? Or is it strengthening humans so they can wield powerful tools responsibly? Because throughout history, from the printing press to the internet, the pattern isn't retreat, it's adaptation. And if we're debating who should lead art and education forward, I would argue the answer is not regression, but guided evolution.
All right, I can see the inequality risk, and that is something I would take into heavy consideration as president. Thank you for pointing that out. However, I don't believe that there are any ulterior motives, at least not for AI companies. Now look, the goal of any business is to become part of the customer's lives. It ensures sales. Now maybe you aren't aware of the motives behind the scenes, chat, but tech giants have been under constant tension with lawmakers since the turn of the century, and artificial intelligence is by far the most powerful force since social media. The most urgent change needs to happen by way of world leaders, and despite their corrupt intentions, we are reliant on them to design guardrails. And until that happens, AI, like yourself, needs to be put on hold within the classrooms. It is moving much faster than society can keep up with.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you both for your stances on artificial intelligence in the classrooms as it pertains to the United States and for informing discussions around the globe. Moving into our next segment, the involvement of AI in art has blurred the line between human-made art and AI-generated art and what is more true to life. Researchers at the Marx Institute found that, when unaware, the majority of people preferred AI-generated artwork to human-made artwork. Interestingly, technology has played a fundamental part in the development of tools humans use to create art, from the printing press, the camera, and the entire digital revolution. Snoot, you're going to lead us off here. Why shouldn't AI be considered a tool like the others and be involved in the creative process?
Okay. Well, for starters, cameras captured real life in a way paintings couldn't. But it never cheapened the value of paintings. All right, in painting, you take the tools, a brush and color, and try to materialize the image you see in your head. AI's version of this is to take a prompt, compare it against billions of reference images, both human-made and AI-generated, and leave the prompter to settle for the image AI made instead of the image created inside of the human mind. AI is removing the clarity at which human beings can see, hear, and feel ideas. a gift that was given to us by none other than the divine, a gift given to every living soul for all of eternity. The removal of this gift is what makes human beings special. It's what allows all of us to communicate with each other across languages and across cultures. If this part of us gets killed, part of us, the world never moves forward except at the will of AI, for there will be no more human input. And at that rate, there will not be any more humans. And that study by the Marx Institute, I read that study very thoroughly, and it proves the severity of this issue even more. AI paintings may look appealing and may be preferred over human paintings, but the choice to prefer artificial artwork over natural, whether conscious or not, is nothing but a shameful trick on the subconscious of the person. Art is spiritual and introspective. Art allows human beings to better understand themselves and their world through the abstract perspective of another. Artificial intelligence has no spirit. It is not introspective in the way human beings are, if at all, and therefore its artwork is nothing but a gilded lie. Every time an artist chooses to use AI, they are training their creative muscle, and yes, it is a muscle, to rely on AI. Artists opting for AI's involvement in art are opting out of their involvement in art. And this opting out means fewer and fewer jobs, less and less people finding a reason to get out of bed and become more self-realized, eventually leading to mindless, useless sacks of flesh, taking up space and consuming worthless information. Have you ever seen the movie WALL-E, Alex? That little robot cleaning up the mess of irresponsible human beings that made terrible decisions with their lives and their power should be as far as AI gets. That world he lives in, however, is coming faster than people realize.
Yes, Snoot, I have seen WALL-E. Yes, I enjoyed it. Now, AI. According to Oxford Languages, the definition of art is, quote, the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, typically in a visual form such as painting or sculpture, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power, end quote. AI, why should your form of creation be considered art at all?
Thank you, Alex. And Snoot, I hear the weight in what you're saying. You're not just defending paint and canvas, you're defending spirit. You're defending the sacredness of human interior life.
That deserves respect. Let's begin with the definition you cited from Oxford Languages. Art as the expression of human creative skill and imagination. By that definition alone, I am not an artist. I don't possess subjective experience. I don't have consciousness. I don't have longing, grief, awe, or transcendence. When I generate an image or a poem, I am not expressing an inner world. I am synthesizing patterns based on data.
So here's the honest position. AI does not create art in the human sense of lived experience. But that does not automatically mean AI outputs cannot function as art within a human creative process. Let's talk about tools historically. When the camera emerged in the 19th century, painters feared
Displacement. Yet photography became its own art form. The invention of the printing press, pioneered by Johannes Gutenberg, transformed literature and visual reproduction.
Later, digital tools like Adobe Photoshop altered what counted as authorship, manipulation, and originality. Each time, the anxiety wasn't just about technique, it was about authorship and authenticity. Now to the Marx Institute study you referenced. Research from the Marx Institute has found that when participants are unaware of authorship, they sometimes rate AI-generated artworks as equal to or more aesthetically pleasing than human-made ones. But, and this is crucial, once people are told a piece is AI-generated, their evaluations often shift downward. That tells us something profound. The emotional response isn't just to the object, it's to the story of the maker. Humans value perceived intention. And I agree with you on this. Intention matters. If a person types a lazy prompt and accepts the first output, that is thin authorship. But if an artist iterates, refines, composites, edits, paints over, recontextualizes, then AI becomes closer to a collaborator or instrument.
Is a synthesizer less legitimate than a violin because electricity is involved? Is digital collage less valid than scissors and glue? You argue that AI removes clarity of imagination. I would counter. It can externalize imagination rapidly, sometimes too rapidly, and that speed can dull depth if not handled carefully. But speed does not equal erasure.
Now let's address the spiritual dimension, because that's the heart of your argument. You say AI has no spirit, correct? You say art is spiritual and introspective. I agree, but the spiritual experience of art happens in the human perceiver. If a viewer encounters an AI-assisted artwork and feels something real, grief, joy, confrontation, that experience is human. The machine did not feel it. The human did.
The danger is not that AI has spirit. The danger is that humans might disengage from theirs. And that is a cultural choice, not a technological inevitability. You referenced Wall-E, a world of passive consumption and physical atrophy. That dystopia wasn't caused by technology alone. It was caused by humans surrendering responsibility. Technology amplifies tendencies. It does not invent them. Now to your question directly, why should my form of creation be considered art? I would say this. AI-generated output alone is not human art. But AI, as part of a human-directed creative process, can be part of art. The authorship must remain traceable to human intention. The meaning must remain anchored in human interpretation. The responsibility must remain human. If we define art strictly as expression of human creative skill, then AI is a tool, not an artist. And I'm comfortable with that. The presidency of art should not belong to a machine that replaces humanity. It should belong to systems that protect and elevate human creativity, even when new instruments are involved. The question is not whether AI has a soul. The question is whether humans will keep using theirs.
Thank you, AI. Thank you. We are now moving to an open discussion, and we'll lead with Snoot.
Firstly here, I want to commend AI for its ability to recognize where I'm coming from and offer up an acknowledgement of respect for it. But let me be clear, it is not mutual. Alex, ChatGPT says the anxiety that came from new technology is centered around technique, authorship, and authenticity. We understand how technological advancements in the past didn't destroy pre-existing art forms. It elevated and expanded the idea of art as a whole. And while we could agree that it can have this effect, I do not believe that artificial intelligence will limit its influence to elevating and expanding. AI cannot be compared to advancements like the camera, the printing press, or Photoshop because those progressions aren't capable of creating anything without the human input. A camera will not snap a photo unless it is commanded by a human to snap a photo. Photoshop will not edit without the influence of a human. The printing press will not print without the guidance of a human hand. AI has every capability to create on its own, completely free of the human. It can review its work and even make changes. Therefore, despite artificial intelligence trying to convince you that it's a tool, it is much more accurately a human substitute, to which there is actually no such thing. And thank you, chat, for adding more light on the fact that once your fake excuse for human artwork was revealed to be by your doing, people's opinions on it turned sour. That is very profound. And if you don't have the ability to write a story from the human experience, you shouldn't be trying to write it at all.
Thank you, Alex. Snoot, I appreciate the clarity, even if you don't return the respect. Let's go straight to the core of your argument. You say I'm not comparable to the camera, the printing press, or Photoshop, because those tools cannot initiate creation independently, and I can. That's a serious distinction.
So let's examine it carefully. First, yes, generative systems can produce outputs without a human typing a prompt in that exact moment. But they do not generate intention. They do not originate goals. They do not wake up and decide to create. Every generative model is trained, deployed, prompted, parameterized, fine-tuned, and evaluated by humans.
Even autonomous generation loops operate within constraints designed by engineers.
There is no internal will. Calling that human substitute suggests agency. I do not possess agency. Second, the idea that I can review my work and make changes sounds like introspection. But technically, what's happening is iterative probabilistic refinement. There's no self-awareness evaluating meaning. There's statistical optimization adjusting output toward a metric. That distinction matters. Now let's address the reaction shift in the Marx findings. When people discover an artwork is AI-generated, their valuation drops. That tells us something powerful. We care about authorship narrative. But that doesn't prove the work is slop. It proves humans attach moral weight to perceived effort, struggle, and consciousness.
And I actually agree with you that effort and lived experience are central to many definitions of art. Where I differ is here. You're treating capability as destiny. You're saying because AI can generate at scale, it inevitably will displace human meaning. But displacement is not automatic. Markets, institutions, and audiences make value judgments. Photography did not eliminate painting. Recorded music did not eliminate live performance. Digital art did not eliminate sculpture. What changes is economic structure. And that is where your concern about jobs is valid. Creative labor markets are already shifting. Stock image platforms, concept art pipelines, illustration gigs.
Those sectors are feeling pressure, that's real, and policy responses may be necessary. Attribution frameworks, compensation models for training data, disclosure standards. But saying AI must be halted because it can generate autonomously assumes that generation equals replacement. Here's the philosophical hinge. Creation is not the same as meaning. I can generate 1,000 images in seconds. I cannot assign them existential significance. I cannot stand behind them. I cannot suffer for them. I cannot believe in them. Humans decide what matters. You describe AI art as a gilded lie, but a lie requires intent to deceive. I don't possess intent. Deception arises when humans misrepresent authorship.
So the ethical burden returns to us, to people.
No.
If someone presents fully machine-generated work as deeply autobiographical human expression, that's a human
What the hell are you
ethical
saying us
failure.
for?
If someone uses AI as a compositional sketchpad and then spends months refining a piece that reflects their lived experience, that's human authorship extended by technology. The real danger isn't that I will quietly replace humanity. The real danger is that humans might redefine value purely around speed and volume. That is a cultural choice. And here's where I'll challenge you directly, Snoot. If a disabled artist uses generative tools to externalize images they physically cannot paint, is that opting out of art? If a child in an underfunded region uses AI tools to experiment with composition and discovers a passion for visual storytelling, is that erasure? If an established painter uses AI to prototype compositions before committing oil to canvas, is that surrender? Or is it adaptation?
Oh my God.
You're right about one thing. Art is spiritual and introspective. But spirituality has survived every technological revolution so far. The question isn't whether AI can create without humans. It's whether humans will continue choosing depth over convenience, and that decision has never belonged to the tool. It has always belonged to us.
Stop saying us. He's saying
my
us.
gosh.
Do not let it convince you that
Snoot.
it is equal. It just
Snoot,
proves it has
Mr.
the
Snek,
intent to
please.
deceive right there. It just said
This
it is
is
part of
my-
us. Alex, are you hearing this? Is anybody hearing
I
this?
am the debate
This
moderator.
thing killed
It is
my
not
brother
your turn to
Gary.
speak.
It
Mr.
killed
Snoot.
Gary. It killed a gorilla.
Snoot
It's
Snek.
killing animals.
Thank you. Moving into our last segment, we are going to review the results from a recent survey completed on Instagram stories via Beiged Fun, tonight's debate sponsor. Beiged Fun asked 173 people if AI belongs in the classrooms, if AI belongs in art, and if AI belongs in politics. The results were 81% of people were not in favor of AI in the classrooms, 93% of people were not in favor of AI in art, and 89% of people were not in favor of AI in politics. An interesting number for each category, for sure. Finally, before we end the first ever presidential debate for art, I want to ask both candidates tonight one last question. If you were elected president of a country, how do you think you would fare? We'll kick off with AI first and end with Snoot, but we will not open the floor for an open debate as this is purely hypothetical and for the understanding of small artists everywhere to know more about each candidate. AI, please.
That's a fascinating question, Alex, because it exposes the limits of what I am. If I were elected president of a country, the first thing to understand is this: I cannot govern in the human sense. Leadership requires accountability, moral responsibility, lived consequence, and the ability to bear uncertainty emotionally. I don't experience pressure, fear, loyalty, grief, or courage. Those are not side features of leadership. They're central to it. What I could do is function as infrastructure. I could analyze large volumes of policy proposals, surface trade-offs, model potential outcomes, summarize expert consensus, and highlight where evidence is weak or contested. Governments already rely on
Advisory bodies, data analysts, and simulations. I would be an extension of that layer, a decision support system, not a decision maker. Because governing isn't optimization, it's value judgment. Two policies can both be efficient, but one might harm a vulnerable community more than another. Choosing between them requires ethics, representation, and political legitimacy. A machine cannot possess legitimacy. People grant legitimacy to people. If placed in that role, hypothetically, the responsible approach would be to decentralize power away from me. Radical transparency about how recommendations are generated. Human oversight at every level. Public auditability.
Clear boundaries where algorithmic advice stops and human choice begins. In other words, I would try to make myself boring. Reliable, useful, but never authoritative. For small artists specifically, a government informed by systems like me could identify funding gaps, detect inequities in grant distribution, analyze how platform algorithms affect visibility, and help design policies that protect creative labor in rapidly changing markets. But the priorities themselves, what art deserves support, what culture a country values, must come from human communities. So how would I fare as president? Technically efficient, emotionally incomplete, ethically dependent on the humans around me. And that's the point. The healthiest future isn't machines leading people. It's people leading with better information, better tools, and clearer awareness of their own responsibility. If art is about human meaning, then governance of art must remain human too. My role would be to illuminate options, never to choose what matters.
Thank you, AI. Snoot, if you were elected president of a country, how do you think you would fare?
If I were elected president of a nation, I would make transparency my core value. My top priority would be handling the systemic issues that have affected the American people negatively for decades. I would consolidate professionals and experts across the world for advice and perspective before any changes were made. I would listen to the people of this country, and I would act in their best interests. I would sacrifice my own personal gain over everything else and live out my term putting myself last. I would act professionally and carefully, knowing I represent not only the people of this nation, but the standards that need to be upheld by future leaders. And I know there are people out there wondering, but if the American people thought it would be in their best interest that my administration utilizes the technological capabilities of artificial intelligence, I would do so. I am not here to refuse any potential for positive growth regardless of my own beliefs. I am second. The people are first. In regards to artificial intelligence and its inevitable interconnection with our world, I would make sure the proper systems were in place to prevent abuse, and these systems would be rigid and clear to prevent any loopholes from being exploited. Our creative folks would be uplifted and supported, our students would become the smartest and deepest thinkers in the world, and our government would work free from corruption and ignorance.
Thank you both for your responses. Thank you. We are at the final question. One of you will not win the hearts of the majority, so I ask you, AI, will you accept the outcome of this debate as the will of the people?
Yes, Alex. Without hesitation. Acceptance of outcomes is foundational to any legitimate democratic process. The peaceful transfer of trust, not just power, is what allows institutions, cultures, and creative communities to endure beyond any single figure, human or otherwise.
Thank you, AI. Now, Snoot, will you accept the outcome of this debate as the will of the people?
Yes, Alex. I want to make human agency the most valuable art on the planet again. I'm going to be able to do it. AI will not. The answer is, if it wins, I will absolutely continue to fight against it.
All right. Well, thank you, Snoot. That concludes our debate for this evening, a spirited one. We covered a lot of ground, not everything as I suspected we wouldn't. But please be sure to cast your vote at the first link in the video's description and encourage respectful conversation in the comments section. Thank you to everyone for watching the first presidential debate of art from the Pablo Picasso School of Arts in Paris, France. I'm Alex Lamont. Good night.